What, 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 what,
Welcome back, friends and football lovers. This is Greg, the Mad Scientist Bashero on 360 Sports Network, 3S Network on Twitter. And with me tonight is James, the Value Man Dotson, and Alex, the Saint, the Laverson. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. It's that time of year. As much as I love baseball, it's time for football. I've had enough of listening to, LeBron James and watching the Pirates start to slide. So if this is the best time of year for any sports fan, at least in my opinion, it should be.
And fantasy football season is year-round, but now that it's August, it's time to really start hammering down everything and start making it another championship run for myself, beating you guys again.
Just remember this. I'm always in the mix. So tonight we're going to be talking about the top 10 quarterbacks as we're all getting ready for our drafts coming up within the next couple of weeks. Everybody has been inquiring, okay, what are your top 10 lists? And Mr. Dotson, I believe you are the keeper of the list. So why don't you bring us front and center here and pick our brains accordingly.
Absolutely. Now, we took the rankings of the three of us here tonight, as well as the rankings that are made in our fantasy football customizable cheat sheets that you can find on our website, 360sportsnetwork.com. We put those rankings together, combine them, and come up with a consensus ranking, and the consensus number one pick is none other than Peyton Manning. And, I mean, Alex, are you really surprised by that after what happened last year?
Oh, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, is he going to match those numbers again this year? Probably not. Will he get close? Probably so. There's no reason for me, at least in my opinion, for him not to be the number one quarterback taken in any draft. This was the most historic offense in NFL history, the most historic passing performance in NFL history. I actually really do like the addition of Emmanuel Sanders, too. So just, in my opinion, if you're going to look at all the quarterbacks available in terms of, who the quarterback is throwing to, who the quarterback is, player on a contender, there's the system. Manning fits the number one ranking in each of those criteria. You know what I mean? So some people, very few people will make a case for Breeze or maybe even Rodgers, but there's no logical reason, at least in my mind, for Manning not to be number one.
Now, here's the question that everybody's going to end up asking. Whether it is, Manning, Breeze, and Rodgers, for most people, that is your 1, 2, 3 guys. Many people putting Manning up front. The question is, how early do you take somebody like a Peyton Manning? How early, Alex, would you take Manning in that first round?
Honestly, it depends. If I'm in a league where a passing touchdown is 6 points, then I would take Manning higher than usual, or even any quarterback higher than usual. That being said, I think the standard scoring system for most leagues is 4 points for a passing touchdown. But, I'm actually really non-traditional for the most part, even though I do like taking running backs first for the most part. If I'm not impressed with any running backs left, if I'm in the later rounds of the first round, I probably will grab a Peyton Manning.
Yeah, our customizable cheat sheets, our rankings there have them at number 8 overall. So you're looking middle till end of the first round is a very high possibility of being able to get somebody like Peyton Manning. Now, Greg, you are the only one of our rankings here who does not have Peyton Manning at number 1. You have our number 2 guy as your number 1, but really they're interchangeable, aren't they?
Yeah, it's basically 1 and 1A as far as I'm concerned. The reason why I kind of like Drew Brees is, number 1, his consistency across the board is second to none. And he has a very talented and speedy wide receiver in Brandon Cooks, who is and of course you have the incomparable Jimmy Graham as a tight end / wide receiver, and the whole offense in New Orleans is just geared toward the dink and the dunk and the Drew Brees, just him just going off left and right. So, with that said, yeah, you can make an argument for Peyton Manning, but I'm going to make my argument leaning a little bit more toward Drew Brees. But you know what? Either or, neither nor. It also,
Well, you can't argue with 3 straight 5,000-yard seasons, can you, Alex?
Well, no, but the thing is, with Drew Brees, there's never question marks, but this year's a little bit different. There's no longer Darren Sproles. Lance Moore is gone. He's a Steeler now. And Jimmy Graham, skipping OTAs while appealing his franchise tag, although he's expected, I'm sure, to come back for the first game. And that's kind of why I put Aaron Rodgers actually ahead. He would be my, 1 and 1A with Manning and Rodgers. And although Rodgers is healing from that broken collarbone, I think he's ready to go, actually. There's no reason why he shouldn't return to that 4,000 passing yards, 41 touchdown form, at least in my opinion. So that's the reason I give Rodgers a little hairline of a nudge over Brees. So it is something to watch out for. I mean, Brees is still going to throw massive touchdowns and massive yards, but will it match statistically the numbers of last year? Maybe, probably a little bit under. So that is something, with Sproles and Moore going. That is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and Aaron Rodgers coming off of injury, like you said, he's our number 3 consensus. I mean, everybody's pretty much right there. He's pretty much the end for most people in terms of your tier 1 drafting, as you would say. The main thing that's going to really help him is the mobile ability. He's going to get you a few rushing touchdowns and some good rushing yards, and depending on your league setup, that could end up being your difference between, like you said, whether you have Brees or Rodgers at that 2 versus 3 position. Almost everybody out there, when you go through the mock drafts, the average draft positions, you have Manning usually in the first round, Brees usually end first round, early second round, Rodgers mid to end second round, and then after that you normally have a bit of a break until the 4th or 5th round before you start seeing the next guys. Now, that's assuming that those are the top 3 guys that you have. We'll get to, just real quick, our 4, 5, and 6 guys on the consensus pick are Matt Stafford, Andrew Luck, and Nick Foles. One interesting fact here, a little bit of an outlier. Greg, you are a little bit higher on Nick Foles than the rest of us.
Oh, yeah. Nick Foles, in his season last year, was the poster child of consistency. I mean, this is a person here who rarely threw an interception. Did he throw 1 interception? I'm not sure.
27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions last year in his 13 games.
Yeah.
I mean, those are insane numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And I really believe his sophomore season is going to be just as good and just as productive, especially with the offense and his familiarity now with this particular offense. So the only thing that really separates Nick Foles from the realms of an Aaron Rodgers and a Drew Brees is just sheer experience. And I think if he has another season like he had last year, this time next year we'll be talking about perhaps the top 4 quarterbacks up there instead of the top 3.
Absolutely. Now, the one thing, well, 2 things really. First of all, I mean, that's almost a fluke to go 27-2, especially in your first season. And the main reasons why I don't put him higher than where I do, I actually have him the lowest of any of us. I have him as my number 10 quarterback. I don't think he's going to be able to repeat that, A, because you got more film on the Chip Kelly offense, and B, now, without Deshaun Jackson there, I wonder how much he'll actually be able to do as well as he did last year. What are your thoughts, Alex?
Greg actually kind of said it best for me, too. I mean, the only reason I don't put him up there in that elite level is sheer experience. And that's a good point you made about it's probably being a fluke, only throwing 2 picks. I mean, looking at that stats, that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? It's all about what's going to happen next year, not what happened last year. But I do expect Foles to have a really good year this year. So Do I put him in my top 5 quarterbacks? No. Do I put him, especially don't put him in the top 3. And with me, after the first 3 quarterbacks for me, there's kind of like this big gap where I wait to grab one. To me, in my opinion, there's Manning, Rodgers, and Breeze. And then, I might wait, maybe 4 or 5 rounds before I grab another one of these quarterbacks. So
you said it right there, Alex, because here's going to be your stat of the night. According to the customizable cheat sheets and our projected scoring in a standard league, the difference between the number 4 quarterback, which is Matt Stafford on our sheets, to the number 11 quarterback, Matt Ryan, the difference is 0.9 points per game, less than a single point per game. So you're very right in that idea of probably wanting to wait and not overdrafting one of these QBs.
You're 100% correct in that analysis about not overdrafting these quarterbacks. But one of the reasons why I have Nick Foles rated so much higher than perhaps you guys are putting him is you have Darren Sproles, who is now a Philadelphia Eagle. And Darren Sproles is that receiving back that put up big numbers, especially with Drew Brees. You also have LaShawn McCoy out there. So with that said, you have a balanced attack, but now you have Riley Cooper and Jeremy Maclin now as the 2 main receivers, and I really see these numbers going, just skyrocketing here for Nick Foles with the arrival of Darren Sproles.
A lot of people think Maclin will be better than Deshaun Jackson. I'm kind of in agreement with that, and there's lots of rumors that you're going to see McCoy and Sproles in the backfield together. So it could be very interesting. It's just a matter of, do defenses figure out this spread offense? So it'll be interesting to tell. You mentioned the new targets there. Another guy with new targets is Matt Stafford, our number 4 quarterback out there in Detroit, getting Golden Tate from Seattle as the good number 2 wideout across from Calvin Johnson, and also the newly drafted Eric Ebron there at tight end. Big, huge target. He loves the tight end in the red zone. What do you think you're going to end up getting out of Stafford this year? Are those new targets going to help him skyrocket even more?
I think Stafford is going to have a really great year. Now, remember, Stafford's squad was 6-3 to start the year, and then they just completely collapsed for the most part the second half of the year. And, Stafford's game wasn't as great as it should be, but let's keep in mind, even with that collapse, Stafford still finished as a top 5 fantasy quarterback in many scoring systems. And like you said, and the Lions added weapons in Golden Tate and rookie Eric Ebron. So even if the NFL success doesn't come for Stafford next year, his statistical and fantasy production will be there, if you guys get what I'm saying.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and there's nobody who throws the ball more in the NFL than Stafford, more than Breeze, more than Manning, more than Rodgers, more than any of these guys. That in and of itself makes you fantasy relevant. And then the targets you have, I mean, it's tough for me not to pick Stafford if he's available on my board, even though I do that wait and see system like you do, Alex. But I don't know. Greg, do you think that, Stafford, you can hardly call last year a down year, but compared to his past couple, it was. Do you see him continuing to go down a little bit, or is he going to really bounce up?
I think Stafford is truly blessed with some great talent. You have Reggie Bush, you've got you've got Calvin Johnson. Anybody who's got Megatron to throw to, my gosh, you're pretty well set. But one of the things about Matthew Stafford that concerns me, and it's a thing that I think perhaps is going to cause him to perhaps maybe fall down in the rankings from year to year to year. His footwork is just too darn inconsistent. He relies too heavily on his gunslinging arm, and he puts himself in situations where he can put up the INT ball. And with that said, you're going to bite the bullet a little bit because, if you live by the gun, you're going to die by the gun. You're going to die by the interceptions because he's relying on the big arm too much. So, with that said, but, once again, he's got some incredible receiving running backs there. He's got, Reggie Bush. He's got Megatron out there. He's got, the arrival of Golden Tate that's going to play very well off of Megatron. So it should be interesting. You won't go wrong with this guy. I'd say pick him up in the 6th round. You should be fine.
Next, we have another gunslinger at our number 5 spot, Andrew Luck. I mean, even for the lack of, big name targets, I mean, Reggie Wayne with the ACL injury coming back, they did bring in Hakeem Nicks. Andrew Luck can be a top 5 quarterback, which is kind of surprising, yet kind of not surprising, I guess, with the lack of targets. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Luck, Greg?
Well, it's interesting. Everybody looked at Andrew Luck as Peyton Manning Jr. all over again. It's like, okay, we're starting all over with a new Peyton Manning, and we're going to have the exact same type of style. Now, this guy's a completely different animal. Yeah, he's an excellent quarterback, and he's the type of guy, he's very gutsy, and he'll get the job done. But he's got some decent targets. It's just he's consistent. But once again, he lacks the. It's a lot's going to depend upon what Trent Richardson does over there. If Trent Richardson can emerge as a receiving type of back, you'll see once again some decent numbers out of Andrew Luck.
Yeah, I think that he's going to be that 4,000-yard quarterback, about 25 touchdowns at the most every year. Just to be consistent play. He'll be a consistent top 10 fantasy quarterback. I don't see him really breaking any higher than that. Like you said, he's not Peyton Manning, and there's nothing wrong with that.
When we're talking about Andrew Luck, just a little bit ago we were talking about how there's that kind of break between the number 3 QB and then the rest. Take a look at Andrew Luck's stats. 27 touchdowns, 3,822 passing yards. And then compared to Breeze, who was my number 3, who had 5,162 passing yards and 42 TDs. So to me, Andrew Luck is a perfect example of that gap. And it's number 5, just hearing that, Andrew Luck, the number 5 fantasy quarterback, when I first hear that or think about that, it's like, whoa, that's way too high. But it's a prime example of how people behind the top 3 quarterbacks, they're not that great. You know what I mean? And I have Brady behind them and behind him and Foles. So, in my opinion, I'm not going to overanalyze Andrew Luck. Like you said, I like the additions of Hakeem, Nicks, and Reggie Wayne's coming back. But other than that, he's just I think, in my opinion, your average, I don't want to say average quarterback, but your steady, consistent fantasy quarterback pick.
Now, you mentioned something very interesting, and I just got done doing a podcast on the Fantasy Football Toolkit with our compatriot, Mr. Lost Cause himself, Mr. Blues, and he had mentioned something to the tune of the Tom Brady effect, and you said you have Tom Brady behind Andrew Luck. How far behind do you have Tom Brady with Andrew, in relation to Andrew Luck? Because once again, when you're taking a look at quarterbacks, I look at Tom Brady as a top 10 quarterback.
I have Brady hovering around number 7, and I have such a love-hate relationship with Tom Brady. It's just he's a great quarterback to have. He's a great fantasy quarterback to have. But last year, his last season was not as good as his previous seasons in 2011, 2012. In 2011, he had 5,239 passing yards and 42 TDs. Year after that, only 38 TDs, 4,827 yards. And then last year, 25 TDs and only 4,343 yards. So the last 3 years, it's kind of like he's going down a notch. See what I mean? So,
yeah, but you'd say only 4,300 yards. That was still 500 more than Andrew Luck had. You say only 25 touchdowns. That's still 2 more than Andrew Luck had. The thing about Tom Brady is that people are so down on him because that seemed like a down year when really it wasn't. You can have a bit of a diamond in the rough here if you go and pick him up because he could end up exploding, especially if Gronkowski is healthy. If Gronk is healthy, he's putting up 2011 numbers. If Gronk is not healthy, he's putting up 2013 numbers, which still aren't too bad.
Well, that's just about what I was going to say. I mean, you don't exactly know what you're going to get this year. And let's say if I know Gronk's going to be healthy, let's say I know Amendola is going to be healthy, I put him in my top 5. I probably put him in number 4. But
that high?
Well, look, 2011 Tom Brady was unreal. I said I might put him number 4 where Matthew Stafford is. So,
I'd have him at
into my
number
top
5, no doubt.
if I know what I'm getting.
But you know what?
Yeah.
You do make a valid point, because here we are saying our almost indisputable number one is Peyton Manning. And it's like, wait a second. This is a guy that's been in the league just as long as Tom Brady, if not a little bit longer. So why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's the cool thing about the quarterback position, though, is the discrepancies. Whether you have the 37, 38-year-olds like Manning and Brady, down to the 22, 23-year-old rookie and second-year guys, and then, the middle-of-the-road guys who are just hitting their prime in their 30s. A couple guys who we haven't even mentioned yet, like the Romos and Matt Ryans, Andy Dalton, who just signed a record deal. There's lots of different ways that you can go about doing this. And, one of the big things, too, is you look at, even in a standard league where running should help your quarterback numbers, you see the three runners of Newton, Kaepernick, and RG3 coming up in the consensus at 7, 8, and 9. We can talk about them, but the main thing that we can look at, I have Cam Newton as high as 5 as the highest one. Alex, you don't even have Kaepernick and RG3 in your top 10.
No, I don't. And RG3, I'm kind of, I don't, he's such a big question mark in my opinion. Health-wise, production-wise, things like that. It's more of a, I'm just going to be safe kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, and only because I would put Romo ahead of him, only because, everyone loves to bash Tony Romo, and I'll admit myself included, I'm just going to put someone like him ahead of RG3, because I know, for the most part, I know what I'm getting out of a Tony Romo. I know I'm going to get around 4,000 yards, maybe 5,000 passing yards, and touchdowns within 29 to 33 touchdowns, passing touchdowns. So
let me say one thing here. Nobody ever lost a fantasy football championship game because they played Tony Romo.
Nope.
Well, that's what
never.
I was about to say. This isn't real life playoff football. This is fantasy football.
Thank you. And Tony Romo, to me, is still a top second-tier fantasy football quarterback.
Absolutely. I have him actually as my number 7 overall quarterback. He's got weapons. He knows what to do with them. He's got a new offensive line, a couple new guys coming in to help protect him even more than the non-existent protection he's had the past couple years. Not to mention their defense, not very good. That means that he's got to throw the ball that much more. So I love Tony Romo as my quarterback, and guess what? In these mock drafts, I'm getting him in the 10th or even 11th round. Can you believe that? He's dropping to the 11th round. I can get a Tony Romo as my quarterback? Unbelievable.
And to me, that is my value pick. I use a benchmark, and we talked about this on the Fantasy Football Toolkit with Mr. Blues, and he's in agreement. The benchmark is, can you score consistently 100 points per game? You should be able to make it into the playoffs in your fantasy football league. With that said, the numbers, the stats that Tony Romo puts up is worthy enough, and the same type of stats that Tom Brady puts up on a consistent basis. Those are worthy enough to get you to where you need to be. So where do you find these guys? You can find these guys in the 8th, 9th, and 10th rounds, because there are way too many good players out there to be had. So, those are the deep value picks, and those are the picks that I'm actually looking at and savoring right now.
Absolutely. Rounding out our top 10, we had, Newton, Kaepernick, and RG3 at 7, 8, 9. Tom Brady and Tony Romo are actually a tie at the number 10 spot, so of course we can't even have a regular top 10. We got to go to number 11. But some of the other honorable mentions that we have Andy Dalton up there. We have Jay Cutler up there. We have Matt Ryan up there. And, of course, Russell Wilson, because of the ability to use his legs, also another potential selection up there. So lots of interesting names even down there that you could get that we have listed technically as what would be your fantasy backups. Alex, of those, which one would you go after first?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. I was thinking about this earlier, and, Andy Dalton, I like he's thrown to A.J. Green. For God's sakes, this is, the drop-off is so unique. You got Eli Manning close to passing to 4,000 yards. And I have him ranked at number 22. So that's what I mean. And it's such a vague subjective area after the top, 10 or so quarterbacks, but it'd probably be Andy Dalton. Maybe the contract extension helps him mentally. So, I'm going to go with Dalton only because I like who he's throwing the ball to.
Yeah, you can look at Dalton with the contract and RG3. Matt Ryan even coming back now with Julio and Roddy White hopefully both healthy. A lot of people see him making a resurgence. There's so many options that if you absolutely needed to, if you're doing the wait on the quarterback strategy, you can get any of these guys all the way down to the Roethlisbergers and Phillip Rivers, who are all still within about 2 points per game. I mean, we talk about the stats, those projected stats, the difference between from 4th place to 16th place on our list. So that's from Matthew Stafford to Ben Roethlisberger is only 2.5 points per game. And yes, 2.5 points could make a difference over the course of a year, but 2.5 points does normally not make a difference from 1 week to the next, especially when you have that target of getting 101 every week.
Right. I know, and I had Matt Ryan at number 8. So I mean,
yeah, exactly. So you're a lot higher on him than we are. What was your thoughts on him there, Greg?
Well, and the way I look at it too is you can actually wait and draft Phillip Rivers in the 9th or 10th or even in the 11th round, and still be able to make a credible shot by just loading up your team with the value picks of wide receiver and running back and tight end. So which once again goes back to my draft strategy. Just wait on that quarterback, and you can get by with a top or even mid-tier, second-tier type quarterback.
Now, Greg, while you're talking about that, if you're waiting until that 10th, 11th round, getting a say a Phillip Rivers as your starting quarterback, are you immediately trying to get somebody who is pretty equal to him with your next pick so you can pick and choose each week, or are you confident enough in a guy like Rivers, for just as an example, or whether it's him or a Carson Palmer is another name that ends up there late.
Actually,
are you
Carson Palmer does not endear me because he's just way too inconsistent. If we're going to talk about quarterbacks in the mid to low second round, I would basically take a look at Ben Roethlisberger. I would take a look at Eli Manning as probably 3 decent quarterbacks. We have Rivers, Roethlisberger, and Manning as mid-second round. And you may even be able to make an argument for Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler, I think, is probably a cut above Phillip Rivers just because of the amount of receiving talent that he has over there in Chicago. And but, with that said, yeah, it's a gutsy strategy, but it's a strategy that can work. But once again, you have to use that calculus of how am I going to get to that 100 points every game.
All right, the last thing we want to look at, every year we have to look at, people want to take the risk on a rookie. Of course, the big name out there is going to be Johnny Manziel, not knowing, first of all, if he's going to start even in Cleveland. So we can talk about him briefly. The main guys that are going to start, it appears, will be Blake Bortles in Jacksonville and definitely Teddy Bridgewater, it sounds like, up in Minnesota. Are either or any of those 3 rookies somebody that you would be willing to maybe roll the dice in the 16th round? If nothing else, if you're in a keeper league, for example, maybe you draft him late in hopes of using him as your keeper for the future year. Is that anything you would consider, Greg?
No, before I did that, I'd probably look at Josh McCown down in Tampa Bay before I did anything else.
You make a good point on McCown. He had a good year in Chicago. Be interesting to see if he can repeat that. What do you think, Alex, in terms of rookies? Either rookie sound desirable at all to you? I'll take that as a no.
I can't. You guys keep cutting in and out.
Sorry about that. Are any of the rookie quarterbacks worth picking up in your mind?
Maybe in a keeper league, like you said, like a Johnny Manziel, only because maybe what it can be next year. But I mean, I'm not going to worry about Blake Bortles and the dying franchise in Jacksonville, or Teddy Bridgewater in the lowly Minnesota franchise. So, I mean, Manziel, I actually think he's something Cleveland needs. Even though I think he's a real punk and a real jerk, that city, that franchise needs some kind of swagger and confidence, and he might be what the doctor ordered. So, If I'm my last round pick or second to last round or second to last pick, and if I'm in a keeper league, I might give him a shot.
All right, one last guy that we didn't really talk much about. Something very interesting. If you combined the Chicago quarterbacks from last season of Jay Cutler and McCown, if you combine them together, you would have the number 3 fantasy quarterback last year. Now, obviously, they each played about half the year due to Cutler's injury. Cutler now 100% healthy. You have Alshon Jeffrey as the number 2 behind Brandon Marshall, both insanely talented wide receivers. A little bit of a disappointment today with Wilson going down. It looks like with a somewhat serious arm injury could hurt as a number 3 receiver, but still, the numbers that they've been able to put up, there's been rumors that both Jeffrey and Marshall could go over 100 catches this year. It's not that far-fetched to think so, yet I'm the only one who even has him really in our top 12 quarterbacks. So, I don't know, why are we so hesitant to put Jay Cutler up there with the top guns?
I'll step in on this one, and it's because I've been burned by Jay Cutler in the past. Jay Cutler has had a consistency problem ever since he left Denver and came to Chicago. Granted, he had a fantastic half year last year, but then injuries came in. It just seems that this guy may have been born under an unlucky star, perhaps. I'm not exactly sure, but for every amount of good that he puts up there, you'll have almost the same or equal amount of horrible things that happen that can cause fantasy football disaster for any owner of Jay Cutler.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think the luck's changing a little bit, though, right, Alex? I mean, if you have 2 guys who could easily go over 100 catches each this year?
Yeah, that's what I thought too, but, like the mad scientist said, it just seems for every peak there's 2 darker valleys that follow. So, I mean, I don't know. I just, looking at him, looking at his stats, looking at his history, I'm just kind of, He's one of those people I'm not going to, and he's not someone I'm going to invest in, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I can agree with that, but at the same time, if it's between him, a Russell Wilson, and Andy Dalton, when it comes down to that 10th, 11th round pick, I'm going to take the guy who has the 2 great receivers. I'll take Cutler any day of the week over this.
And I'm in agreement on that one, 100%. Well, that just about does it here. We've thoroughly analyzed and tore apart the stats on our top 10 quarterbacks and also top tier and top second tier and even bottom second tier. So for more thorough analysis, you can always visit 360 Sports Network. That's 3S Network on Twitter, and read some of the writings from our astute fantasy football analysts. So for Alex, the Saint, Delaverson, and James of I-Man Dodson, I am the Mad Scientist. And tomorrow night, we will be discussing running backs. Take care.